The Goose Girl by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, illustrated by Sabine Brunetian. Once upon a time there was an old queen whose husband had died long ago, and she had a beautiful daughter. When her daughter grew up, she was promised in marriage to a king's son who lived in another country far away. So when the time came for them to be married, and the girl was to set off for that giant land, the old queen gave her a wealth of fine and precious things to take with her: gold and silver, goblets and gems, in short, everything fit for royal dowry, for she loved her child dearly. Besides all this, she gave the bride a maid in waiting to ride with her and deliver her to her bridegroom. Each of them had a horse for the journey, but the princess's horse, which was called Falada, could talk. When it was time to say goodbye, the old mother went to her bedroom, took a knife, and cut her fingers with it until they bled. Then she held a white cloth under them and let 3 drops of blood fall on it. She gave them to her daughter, saying, "Dear child, keep these safe. They will be useful to you on your way." So the 2 of them said a sad goodbye to each other, and the princess put the white cloth in her bosom, mounted her horse, and set out to go to her bridegroom. This is just picture. When they had been riding for an hour, she felt very thirsty and told her maid, "Dismount and bring me some water from the stream in the goblet you have brought for me. I would like a drink." "If you're thirsty," said the maid, "then you can dismount yourself. Lie down by the water and drink, for I'm not going to serve you any more." The princess was so thirsty that she dismounted, bent down to the stream and drank, soft not from her golden goblet. "Dear God," said she, and the 3 drops of blood replied, "If your lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two." However, the princess was meek and said nothing, but mounted her horse once more. So they rode on for several miles, but it was a hot day. The sun was blazing down, and soon she felt thirsty again. As they were coming to a river, she asked her maid in waiting once more, "Dismount and give me some water to drink in my golden goblet." For by now she had long forgotten all the maid's angry words. However, the maid in waiting said even more haughtily than before, "If you want something to drink, get it for yourself. I'm not going to serve you any more." And the princess was so thirsty that she dismounted, bent down to the running water, wept and said, "Dear God." And the 3 drops of blood answered her again, "If your lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two." Then, as she was drinking, leaning far out over the water, the cloth with the 3 drops of blood fell from her bosom and drifted away downstream. In her great distress, she did not notice. However, the maid had seen it and was glad, because now she had power over the bride, for the loss of the drops of blood had made the princess weak and powerless. When she was about to mount her horse again, the maid in waiting said, "I'm the one who will ride Falada now. You can ride this nag of mine." And the princess had to put up with that. Then the maid harshly told her to take off her royal robes and put on her own poor clothes. And finally she was forced to swear under the open sky that she would not tell a living soul at the king's court any of this, and if she had not sworn that oath, she would have been killed there and then. Falada saw it all, however, and remembered everything. Now, the maid in waiting mounted Falada, and the real bride mounted the poorer horse, and so they rode on until at last they came to the palace. There was great rejoicing at their arrival, and the prince came out to meet them and lifted the maid down from her horse. Thinking she was his bride, she was led up the staircase while the real princess had to wait below. Then the old king looked out of the window and saw the princess waiting in the courtyard. He saw how lovely and delicate and beautiful she was, and he went straight into the royal chambers and asked the bride about the girl she had with her, who was now standing down in the courtyard. He wanted to know who she was. "Oh, I brought my maidservant with me for company on the way," said she. "Give her some work to do, so that she doesn't stand around idle." But the old king had no work for her, and could think of nothing but to say, "Well, there's a little boy who keeps the geese. She can go and help him." This boy's full name was Conrad, but he was called Curdie, so the real bride had to go and help him look after the geese. Soon the false bride said to the young king, "Dearest husband, I would like you to do something for me." "With all my heart," said he. "Then send for the slaughterer and tell him to cut off the head of the horse that carried me here, for it gave me trouble on the way." But really she was afraid the horse might speak and say what she had done to the princess. When the real princess heard the faithful Falada was to die, she secretly promised the slaughterer to pay him some money if he would do her a small service. There was a great dark gateway in the city, through which she went morning and evening with her geese, and she asked him to nail up Falada's head under this dark gateway so that she could see him. The slaughterer promised to do as she asked, cut off the horse's head and nailed it up under the dark gateway. Early in the morning, as she and Curdie went through the gateway, she said as she passed by, "Alas, Falada, you hang there." And the head answered her, "Alas, you walk there, Princess Fair. If your lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two." Then she went quietly on out of the city, and they drove the geese into the countryside. And when she had come to the meadow, she sat down and undid her hair, which was like pure gold, and Curdie, seeing it, loved the way it shone and wanted to pluck some of the hairs out. Then she said, "Wind, wind, blow today. Blow Curdie's hat away. Blow it high, blow it low. After it make him go, until I've combed and done my hair and put it in a braid once more." Then such a strong wind came up that it blew Curdie's hat right away across the fields, and Curdie had to run after it. By the time he came back, she had finished combing and braiding her hair, and he couldn't get hold of any of it. Then Cody was cross and wouldn't speak to her, and so they looked after the geese until evening, when they went home. This page only as a picture. The next morning, as they passed under the dark gateway, the princess said, "Alas, Falada, you hang there." And Falada replied, "Alas, you walk there, Princess Fair. If your lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two." Out in the country, she sat in the meadow again and began to comb her hair, and Cody came running up to pull some of it out. So she quickly said, "Wind, wind, blow today, blow Cody's hat away, blow it high, blow it low, after it make him go, until I've combed and done my hair and put it in a braid once more." Then the wind rose and blew Cody's hat far away, so that he had to run after it. And by the time he came back, she had long since braided her hair again, so that he couldn't get any of it, and so they looked after the geese until evening. In the evening, however, when they were home, Cody went to the old king and said, "I don't want to look after the geese with that girl anymore." "Why not?" asked the old king. "Oh, she teases and torments me all day." So the old king asked him what had been happening. "Well," said Cody, "in the morning, when we take the flock of geese out through the dark gateway, there's a horse's head hanging on the wall, and she speaks to it and says, 'Alas, Falada, you hang there.' And then the head says, 'Alas, you walk there, Princess Fair. If your lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two.'" And then Cody went on to tell the king what had happened in the meadow where they looked after the geese, and how he had to run after his hat in the wind. The old king told him to go out with the girl again the next day, and in the morning he himself went and sat behind the dark gateway and heard her talking to Falada's head, and then he followed her out in the countryside and hid behind a bush in the meadow. Soon he saw with his own eyes how the Goose Girl and the Goose Boy came driving their flock out, and after a while the girl sat down and undid her hair, which shone and glittered, and immediately she said once more, "Wind, wind, blow today, blow Cody's hat away, blow it high, blow it low, after it make him go, until I've combed and done my hair and put it in a braid once more." Then a gust of wind came and blew Cody's hat away, so that he had to run after it, and the Goose Girl quietly went on combing and braiding her hair, while the king watched it all. The king then went home unnoticed, and when the Goose Girl came home herself that evening, he called her aside and asked her why she did all this. "I may not tell you," said she, "nor may I tell my troubles to any living soul, for I swore not to under the open sky, and if I hadn't sworn, I would have lost my life." Well, the old king pressed her and would give her no peace, but he couldn't get anything out of her. So at last he said, "If you won't tell me anything, then tell your troubles to the iron stove there." And he went away. So she crept into the iron stove, began to weep and wail, poured out her sorrows, and said, "Here am I, forsaken by everyone, yet I am a king's daughter, and the wicked maid in waiting forced me to take off my royal clothes, and took my place with my bridegroom, while I must be a goose girl. Oh, if my lady mother knew, her poor heart would break in two. The old king was standing outside close to the stovepipe listening, and he heard all she said. So he came in again and told her to come out of the stove. Then she was dressed in royal clothes, and it was wonderful to see how beautiful she looked. The old king called for his son and told him he had the wrong bride. She was only a maid in waiting, but the real bride, said he, was here, and she had been the Goose Girl. The young king was very glad when he saw how good and beautiful the princess was, and a great banquet was held, to which the whole court and the king's friends were invited. At the head of the table sat the bridegroom, with the king's daughter on one side of him and the maid-in-waiting on the other. But the maid-in-waiting was dazzled and did not recognize the princess in all her gleaming finery. Well, when they had eaten and drunk and were merry, the old king asked the waiting maid a riddle. What did the woman deserve who had deceived her lord in such and such a way? He then told her the whole story and asked what sentence should be passed on her. Then the false bride said, she deserves to be stripped naked and put in a barrel lined with sharp nails. 2 white horses should be harnessed to it, and they should drag her up and down the streets until she is dead. This is just a picture. You are that woman, said the old king, and you have passed sentence on yourself. It shall be done just as you say. And when the sentence had been carried out, the young king married his real bride, and they ruled that kingdom together in peace and happiness.